Welcome to ANDOR, the podcast where every week we analyze and scrutinize the Star Wars series ANDOR 7 minutes at a time. I'm Alex Wallenett.
And I'm Rusteen Honardoost.
And we have friends everywhere. And today we are joined by our friend, author, screenwriter, and podcaster, Mark Say. Hi, Mark.
Hello. Hey, how are you both?
Welcome, Mark, to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
My absolute pleasure.
Mark, can you tell us a bit about your history with Star Wars and how did you find the show ANDOR?
Oh, history of Star Wars. How long have you got? Well, basically,
as long as you need.
It changed my life. It changed my life when I was 5. When I was first started school, we had a fire engine, what you'd call a fire truck, come to our school, and we got to sit in the fire truck and put the helmet on and everything. I thought, this is it. This is what I want to be. I want to be a firefighter. We called them firemen then, different times. This is what I wanted to do, and I'm going to put out fires and climb ladders and rescue people and get cats down from trees. Perfect. And then in my mind, it's like a week later, in February 1978, because the film came out May 77 in the US, but in the UK it didn't come out until December 78, and then it was in limited locations. And my 5th birthday was February 78, so my 5th birthday, my dad took me to see it at a cinema in Woolwich, in South London. I'm pretty sure it's the Odeon in Woolwich, which is now a church. And that Star Destroyer came over, and I was like, hang on, what's that? Forget firefight. What's that? How do I be in that? And I've been chasing that ever since. And it became an obsession. I saw it then, and then I'm pretty sure I saw it again near a Christmas with my mum. And I can tell every movie. I can tell you, The Empire Strikes Back. My dad took me to see it at the big Odeon in Leicester Square, which is the big one, and we were in the balcony. And I remember distinctly he had a plastic packet of popcorn, which he ripped open and rained down on the rows below us. And for Return of the Jedi, we were on holiday, and it was quite late in the year. I hadn't seen, because we'd moved and I had less access to cinemas. And I hadn't seen, it was May, and I hadn't seen Return of the Jedi yet. And Mum left me at a cinema. I was 10 years old at the time, and she said, "Is he going to be okay?" And the person said, yeah, he'll be fine. And I went in, and it's basically me and 2 other people to see Return of the Jedi. I think it was later in the summer, maybe August. And I remember that feeling of the credits rolling and just thinking, that's it. It's over. You'd heard rumors about sequels, and in the comics they were saying, oh, will there be more, blah, blah, blah. But I just had this feeling that was it. And I remember this feeling of kind of, this is something to be treasured. So, we'd rent the VHSs when it came on the TV. I recorded it, pausing during the commercial breaks. So, and then I bought the VHSs, and I bought the DVDs and the Blu-rays, and it's just became a kind of a lifelong thing. I remember being very upset with the rest of my classmates when Superman came out, and they were, oh, Superman, hey, what about Star Wars over here? I thought we were into that. So, and when the Timothy Zahn books came out, I got very excited, because you have to remember, between maybe 85, 86 to 97, when, the anniversary re-releases, there was virtually nothing. It was a void, not like today when there's a new series seemingly coming out every other week. It was dark times for Star Wars fans. And, it was things like the books and that. I remember getting the comics. We used to have Return of the Jedi Weekly, which my mum reserved for me at the news agency.
He returns every week.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Regularly. And that was great, because in the back you had comic book adaptations of things like Blade Runner in the back as well, which was terrific. So it was, I felt like the loneliest Star Wars fan in the world for a long, long time. And then came the prequels and ruined everything. So I was in denial about The Phantom Menace for a very, very long time. My son, who's 23, and my daughter, who's 25, those are their movies. They love the originals, they love the classics, but the prequels are kind of their movies. My son Revenge of the Sith is his favorite one. But you kind of it's they were disappointing. They were a mess, frankly. They're full of incredible moments, fantastic moments, but none of it really gels together. And of course, as the obsession grows, I start digging into George Lucas and who he is, and I'm writing myself, and I'm making short films, and I'm scripting, and all kinds of things while I'm going along. And of course, what I realized is this man didn't make it all on his own. He had collaborators, and certainly for the first two films, he had people like Gary Kurtz and Marcia Lucas saying, "George, rein it in, take it easy," and working with those collaborators, putting restrictions on him created something incredible. As soon as those restrictions were off, there's a very good making of on the Phantom Menace DVD, where everyone from Rick McCallum down is, "Hey, George, you're a genius," and he's got a rubber stamp and he's ticking things, and it's another great idea. And it's no one saying to him, "Do you think this would benefit from having a cohesive plot?" It's so it's there was, and I love George. Don't get me wrong, the guy changed my life. He set me on a course, and of course, what he's done with these billions, of course, is to create museums and schools, and he's done great things with them. He's that rare thing, a benevolent billionaire. So I love the guy to death. But whenever he starts a sentence by saying, "I thought it would be fun if something like this happened," it's kind of, no, George, you got to think these things through. "I thought it'd be great to have a musical number in Return of the Jedi." No, George, really, calm down. So it's kind of it's a complex relationship.
Everyone on our podcast has a different George impression, and they're all correct. That is yeah.
Mine's kind of quite Muppety. I apologize for that.
And then he's a bit Muppety. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine's very sad and dour and kind of just goes on here. Like, yeah.
And then we got the sequels, which are their own story. I love Rian Johnson's movie because I love Rian Johnson as a filmmaker. Great. And he did something different. He dared to do so, and he understood the Force.
And he was punished.
And he was punished for it. Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing we got. We've now got this colossal fan. I'm no longer the loneliest Star Wars fan in the universe. They're everywhere, and they're all very opinionated. And they're all obsessed with canon. And, the old universe and the new. It's like the Catholics with, when it all changed in 77 or whatever, when the new Pope came.
Holy Scriptures.
Vatican II?
That's it, Vatican II, thank you. Well, they stopped doing Latin Mass and stuff like that, and people got very upset. So it's kind of like that, in the UK when we have our every 10 years when they, you can put down your religion or what have you. People have put Jedi.
I was Googling, I think I was like the Concordance of Worms. I don't think that's what he's talking about. I was like, I went deep on my AP world history of what Catholic schisms happened.
So yeah, it's I've kind of fallen in and out of love with it. And then Andor comes along.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Tony Gilroy. I mean, I knew about the background shenanigans with Rogue One, and I'd heard him on a couple of podcasts talking about how it was essentially a rescue mission, which I think is kind of a little harsh and unfair on the director Gareth Edwards, who has proven himself to be a very good director.
Yeah.
But obviously, I think the thing you have to remember of Rogue One is it was coming hot on the tail of Force Awakens, which was massive, absolutely massive hit. And I remember talking to friends of, Rogue One, I'm really excited to see that. And people looking, people who, you have to remember, we're not all as obsessed as, the civilians out there. And I remember friends going, hang on, where's Rey? Where's the John Boyega character? So they didn't. So I think Kathleen Kennedy and Disney and everyone were getting very, very nervous that it wasn't, this had to be a hit. If this Star Wars had never really had a flop. So this really had to work. So I think they were panicking. I think they were doubting themselves. But then they bring in Tony Gilroy, who is an incredible writer and, a great filmmaker. Very, very diligent and really knows his stuff. And then they give him a show, Andor. And I was excited from the off because I thought, this is quality. This is going to be good. And it is going to be that. I think when those Timothy Zahn novels came along, they felt a bit more grown up than the movies. Luke Skywalker swears in one of them. He says the word bastard. So it's like, what? So, it was.
I feel like if they did that now, fans would go crazy. They'd be like, Luke never
That's
swears.
not my Luke. My Luke doesn't curse.
Yeah. So you know, I think people were expecting the prequels to be like that, to be darker and more grown up, and they weren't. And then the sequels come along, and for all our criticisms of George Lucas, at least the prequels had an authored feel. There was one voice behind that steering the whole thing along. Whereas the prequels, it was kind of, sequels rather. It was kind of, oh, JJ's going to do one, then Ryan's going to do one, and then Trevorrow's going to, oh, no, he's not. And then JJ comes back in. So it was always going to be, a bugger's muddle. So it was, it's, and then we've got all these Disney shows. I love The Mandalorian because it feels like Jon Favreau's playing with these action figures. It has that great sort of comic book tone to it, which I really, really like. And the others have been okay. I've not, I know how hard it is to get anything made, so I'm never super critical of any movie, even a bad one, because I'm like, at least you got a movie made.
Yeah.
So it's, I always feel sorry for the creators, because there's usually a reason that a movie, no one sets out to make a bad movie. So I think there's usually a reason that they haven't achieved their vision, usually to do with time and money. So, but the Andor is it just ticks so many boxes for me.
It makes everything else look worse, which is a problem.
It like everything, all of television looks worse compared to Andor. You touched on something that's kind of important, though, which is that after the original trilogy ended, Star Wars very much did go away. And I think that's something that's really hard to like wrap our heads around now, given the landscape of like IP mining. That the idea that like you would make a trilogy of films and then it would end and there would be nothing after that.
And VHS was very much into like its nascency of like not even having it at home that you could rewatch whenever you want. It was a thing that you saw in the theater and it kind of disappeared and there was no.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
They released a box set in '95, which, if they ever do release the original versions of the Star Wars trilogy, should be the one they release, because he was always mucking around with the sound mix and the edit from day one. Because I know, because the version I taped off the TV had different dialogue to the version that I got on VHS. So there's that bit where Han's running through the Death Star and there's this trooper goes, "Close the blast door." That's not in some versions. You'll just cut to the trooper running, and then it'll be, "Open the blast door, open the blast door." So little things like that, little sound cues and things, that he was always tinkering with it. So that kind of thing. 95, I think it reached its peak, and then 97, he just completely vomited CGI all over it. So it's that for me is the version that I love the most. But yeah, it was one of those times where you could, first of all, you could see all the films, including the Ewok movies and the dreaded Christmas holiday special. You could read all the comics. You could have read all the books. You could have bought all the action figures. There was a time when they were on the back of one little card, and you could say, "Hey, there's like 24 of them. I could maybe afford to get all those." So you could feel like a completist. And of course, now it's become an obsession.
I will say this: we will get into it, that Andor does a very limited sort of like references to the broader Star Wars universe, but a higher percentage than you would think are to the Christmas special. I don't know if you noticed that, but there's quite a few Christmas special references.
And we've got potentially one in this episode that
I'm talking a lot about it. It's my own. It's a fan theory, but I'm sticking with it.
Well, I only saw it once, and this is again. I was about maybe 9-10 years old, and we went to visit family in Ireland. I've got family in Limerick, and my grandfather wanted to watch the horse racing, because they have horse racing on. It was either Christmas Day or Boxing Day, and he wanted to watch the horse racing, and I wanted to watch. Hang on, there's Star Wars on the TV and it's new. I have to watch this. So I was watching it, and he kept switching it over to the horse racing. I'm like, "Granddad, I want to watch this." Little did I know he was actually doing me a favor. So I've sort of dipped into it and gone, oh. So I've not gone back to it. So yeah.
You kept switching channels and like, man, they're still just like Wookiee shrieking. Like, it's been half an hour. How is this still going on? And then change it back to like Chewie's dad watching pornography in the living room.
But there was no Star Wars Boxing Day special, which would have been really...
Yeah, they should have retitled it for the UK.
Never too late. Never too late. Yeah.
Mark, you are our first UK guest on the show, and we've spent a lot of time talking about the use of accents in Star Wars and what they represent, and how, in Star Wars, a British accent is almost always
evil,
associated with evil. So I'm curious, does Star Wars have a different relationship in the UK, or is that something that you guys just kind of let slide because the movies make up for it?
Oh, we're used to being the evil ones in movies. That's fine. as long as we're getting work, we don't mind. I think we have a huge pride in these movies.
I believe that's the theory of the British Empire was, as long as we're getting work, we can be as evil as we want. Yeah.
That's it, 100%. I think we have a huge pride in this country because they were made here. And they were using British craftspeople. And, the Millennium Falcon was built, I think, in a shipyard in Bristol, I think, or Bath or somewhere like that. Or might have been Wales. Forgive me. And, I've worked with actors who've been in it. When my wife and I did Fringe Theatre, this is when we were in our 20s, we were working with an actor called Declan Mulholland, Irish actor. And we were a few days into rehearsals. Another actor said, "Do you know Declan was in Star Wars?" I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, he was the original Jabba the Hutt." And immediately this 2 + 2 clicked in my head and went, "Oh my God, he's the guy in the hairy suit. He's the guy in the hairy..." Because at that point, we'd only ever seen photos. This was before, the 97 release. And, Deck, you in Star Wars, tell us all your stories. And he was fantastic. He was only supposed to work for a day. And the camera there was a problem with the camera, and he worked all week. He did 5 days on it, which is great because he was getting paid per diem, And he said Harrison Ford was fantastic, and they'd all go to the pub afterwards, and Harrison Ford would buy rounds. He said one day, because Deck was Irish as well, so Deck would say, and then Guinness turns up, and he's standing there watching us, So it's he just had a great time on it. And the big hairy suit that he's wearing is the same one that he wears in Time Bandits, because he's one of Robin Hood's robbers in Time Bandits.
Oh wow!
And he also wore it. Was he in? He might have been in Excalibur. It was one of the.
Did you bring it from home?
Well, the thing is, there's a costume company in London called Angels who supply costumes for some. And Deck was a big guy. He was a big guy. I remember once we were backstage and his zip was open. I said, your zippers, your fly's open, and he went, "Pays to advertise it." Zip. So there were only certain costumes that would fit him, I guess. But the thing about that is, in '97, I was working for Waterstones, which is kind of Barnes and Noble in the UK, big book chain, and we had a Star Wars day. We had loads of books to sell, and I managed to get Dave Prowse to come in and give a talk. But Declan was there. Now, Dave, bless him, by that point had told all of his stories, and he didn't know Declan was coming, and he was a bit miffed, I think, at being a bit upstage, because all the fans were like, Declan, sign this. We've never had your autograph before. This was a new thing, and they all knew about him. And that's how I knew that Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher had an affair, and Carrie had a drug habit back in '97, because Dave told a room full of kids. It's like, I need to bring out my A game when it comes to anecdotes. It's like, Dave, there's kids. Read the room. So bless him.
So Muppet, this is what a cocaine nail looks like. Yeah.
Just dropping all the juiciest gossip to try to win the hearts and minds of a couple of children.
And I started out wanting to act as well. So I didn't know anyone. I come from a working class family. My parents were school janitors, caretakers. I didn't know anyone in the film industry except my uncle, who had a stall. He worked in a market in London, like in the Beatles song. Desmond had a barrow in the marketplace. That was my uncle. And he knew a couple of actors, and he knew a stunt guy called Nosha Powell, who was a regular. He used to play thugs and heavies in British TV shows, and he had been a stormtrooper. So, again, I'm 10, 11 years old. My uncle knows someone who's a stormtrooper. That, again, just blew my mind. So this whole country, the UK, we love Star Wars because of our connection to it, which is probably why we don't like the prequels, because 2 of them were made in Australia. So there's that as well. So it's, we have a great affection for them, and they're full of British actors. And it's something Tony Gilroy said about working on Andor in the UK. He says it's great because he says you've got all these. I heard him on a podcast once where he said you've got these actors who are wasted in soaps like Coronation Street and EastEnders, who are fantastic actors, and you put them in something like this and they just shine. Which is why I think there's no such thing as a dull character in Andor. You know, people playing the smallest parts just, have these great character actors who really bring it to life. So, yeah, we love it. And the accent thing is, we are totally fine with that. So, yeah.
We don't have a lot of them talking at the end, but when we come back to the ISB thing, I'm wondering if you could break down some of the accents, if they have any regional tinges to them that would give in some detail. But,
okay.
But before we get into that, we have one last question that we like to ask our guests, and that's in honor of the late, great Mark Maron. Who are your glupshidos?
You did have to explain this to me before the show, before the recording.
I feel like you know a glupshido better than anyone else we've had on. You just didn't know the term.
No, I didn't know the term. I tell you, this is a weird one because it's from the comics. It's not from any of the TV shows or the films. And it's Jackson, the rabbit, the green rabbit.
Oh, hell yeah.
Who
Do you know about this, Alex?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Who first appeared in a comic, which I had to look up, 8-4 Aduba 3, which came out February 1978. So I probably read this around, saw the movie, got the comics, and then suddenly Han Solo is doing this kind of Magnificent Seven rip-off caper with a rabbit called Jackson, who is just a terrific character. And I'd love to see how Tony Gilroy could shoehorn a character like that into Andor. Tonally, it would be like a green hand grenade thrown into the whole thing. So, Jackson, I used to enjoy Jackson because he's kind of wisecracking, obviously kind of a Bugs Bunny meets Star Wars ripoff. But he was terrific fun, and he was always very, very memorable to me. He was always, he always stuck out. So, I'd love to. I know he's come back in some more recent comics. I just. I'd love to see him in a live action environment, and who knows? The Mandalorian, he'd fit into the Mandalorian, and I'm surprised. He had, because it's Cavan Scott is the writer of the comics, who I think is responsible for bringing Jackson back, because he has a similar kind of I love Jackson, let's make him work kind of vibe.
When Disney eventually buys Warner Brothers, and there's no questions about Bugs Bunny, they will fully. So I pulled up Jackson's Wikipedia. There's two things I want to talk about before we move on. One, similar, as far as I can tell, he has a Salacious B. Crumb situation where he has a middle initial that does not stand for anything, but it's T.
Yeah, Jackson T. Tumperaki.
But
yes, T stands for nothing.
It was just Jackson in the comic, or Jax. So yeah.
So yeah, it's Harry S. Truman, Salacious B. Crumb, and Jackson T. Tumperaki is the single initial middle name. And second, which I'll bring up later, the homeworld Coachella Prime. And later in this episode, we go to Frezno. Those are two slight misspelling. What location? We're going to take a place in California and change one letter. And that's how we get to
bumfuck California and just change a letter. Yeah, we need Tracy, but it's a I instead of a Y is going to be the next Star Wars location.
Exactly.
And yeah, it looks like he's returned thanks to Star Wars Adventures Ghosts of Vader's Castle by Cavan Scott. So anyone who wants to see canon Jackson stories can find him in there. He also shows up in the Rebuild the Galaxy season 2, which is like one of the Lego Star Wars shows on Disney Plus.
Very charming. I didn't watch season 2, but season 1 was very charming.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite Star Wars Marvel characters is Don Juan Quixote, which is a Don Quixote parody of a guy, an old man who thinks he's a Jedi and wanders the galaxy. I haven't read any of his stories, but as a big fan of Don Quixote, if I ever got my grubby mitts on Star Wars, I'm bringing Don Juan back into the canon.
Yeah, that's a nice deep cut. I like that. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
But shall we
Yeah, we should get into the episode now. I did want to double check, Alex, if you have a 1907 minutes.
Yes, I do,
today.
of course.
Okay, because I forgot to tell you about this. We have a second bit that's been going through this arc, which is that this arc is inspired by the time Stalin robbed a bank. And so Alex has been doing a little podcast within the podcast going through it. So at some point, he's going to interrupt the podcast to start this. So I just wanted to give you a warning before we get into it.
No, it's. I remember I worked for the publisher Weidenfeld Nicholson when we brought out Young Stalin by Simon Sebag Montefiore, and that was our hook. That was our thing. Did you know Stalin was a bank robber? And people, what? So that was the thing we always led with, and it's. I'm astonished it hasn't been made into a miniseries yet.
No, they're making a movie.
Are they? Are they finally getting around to it? Okay.
With what's his name from it's Cosmo Jarvis, but what was Shogun?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good choice. Yeah, very good choice. Yeah.
I should actually see who else is in that. For now, I'm curious. But yeah, so we get back to the actual episode.
Yeah, let's dive in.
So previously on Andor, Cassian and his crew and the crew have escaped Aldani, but sadly Nemec has been crushed by a big load of gold money.
Poor Nemec.
No, poor Nemec. Yeah, and as we start, which is the moment Hannah wanted to talk about last week, as Skeen delicately holds Nemec's hand and his cheek. Vel asks if he's still with us, and nobody has a good answer.
It's such a tender moment between the two of them that, like, Skeen is this hardened, badass rebel, but it's very telling that, like, he's almost like interlocked his fingers with Nemec's. Just tells you how close a relationship they've built together.
Yeah.
But yeah, eventually Cassian starts to ask where they're going. And Vel asks again about Nemec, and Skeen says, yeah, he's okay. He's still alive, but are you disappointed? Skeen says Vel wants to ditch Nemec to escape, but Skeen says there's a doctor available as a contingency. This kid is the reason that we are here. And then Cassian decides where they're going, to the doctor's office.
There's two moments in here that I wanted to shout out. The first is that Vel shoots Skeen like a really nasty look when he says that, like, oh, you're just trying to ditch him. You don't care about Nemec. And I think that is maybe Vel picking up on, like, Skeen's ulterior motives here, that he's, like, manipulating the situation. But the other is how quickly Cassian jumps to try to save Nemec. Because I think the Cassian that we met at the beginning of this show probably would not have risked his life for somebody that he doesn't know, like Nemec. But also the Cassian that we meet in Rogue One is also not that person. That Cassian is willing to sacrifice, a supposed ally to protect the rebellion. And here Cassian's in this kind of like middle period where he wants to do good, but is more invested in, like, protecting the people who are around him than the rebellion as a whole.
I think the difference is when we see him at the beginning of Rogue One, obviously this is all retconning because it was written afterwards, blah, 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 blah. But I think the Cassian you see at the beginning of Rogue One is someone who knows when to do that, who is able to make a choice based on experience. Whereas the whole of Andor, both seasons, is him incrementally changing and becoming more and more of an effective leader. And you see him a couple of times in the Aldani raid as well, take control. These guys are flapping about all over the place. I need to step in and take control reluctantly. And of course, as we'll see later in the episode, he's like, yeah, this is too much for me. I'm out. I'm going. Whereas, later on, he's a true rebel. So I think it's fascinating that he, episode 1, he shoots a guy who challenges him in the street without a second thought, really, which is similar to the opening of Rogue One. But I think the difference is in Rogue One, he's making much more of an informed decision.
Yeah.
The mission is more important. My ally is injured. We either both die. Whereas I think what's happening with Nemec, he's like, no, there is time to help him. And these two are bickering. These two people are supposed to be, running the show now. They're the only two left. I'm going to step in and take control and make some decisions.
They're dealing with a lot of like trauma of what just happened. Like half their crew just died. Mm-hmm. I think there's there's a lot of emotional unrest of what are we doing. They're hyped up on adrenaline of just like one of everyone wants to take control because otherwise they don't know what to do with themselves because it's hard to breathe and sit down. And
absolutely, I think this totally ties into Skeen and the key scene with Skeen in this thing. I don't know if you want to get to this yet. But,
we'll get to it in a second.
Yeah.
Should we land on the planet then?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We land on the misty moon of Frezno with a Z, but not an S. They really worked hard that day. Pablo was sick that day. Because I think it only exists for this, right? There was not a previous mention of Frezno.
Is it in? Yeah, this is the only use of the word Frezno.
Is Frezno somewhere where you can get, back alley surgeons or anything? Is it ever a reputation?
It's not too far from where Georgie Porgy is from.
Yeah,
but
which I do literally think is like how they came to it.
Yeah,
like I'm shocked there isn't like a Stodgden or like a Stockton analog.
Sacramento.
Yeah. Sacramento. It's a good one.
So yeah, we land and is treated by Dr. Quadpaw, a 4-armed Gilsarian, with what looks like Lobot's ear technology.
Yeah.
Helmet. And the doctor operates on the back of Vel as she holds up Nemec's IV bags.
Now, Dr. Quadpaw, that in terms of naming, that goes right back to the action figures, doesn't it? Where you had Walrus Face, and,
yeah,
Green Greedo, Dr. Quadpaw, excellent name. Who is? I did look him up earlier as well. He's a Gilsarian surgeon.
Yes,
and yeah.
And we were talking about the holiday special before, and
right.
There is another 4-armed character in the holiday special of Gourmanda, the chef.
Yes.
And so
who I forgot invented the blue noodles that we see earlier in like episode 1 or 2.
Yes.
When one of the IBS soldier guys is eating, or not IBS, Premor.
IBS soldier.
No, the Premor guy is eating blue noodles.
It will give you IBS, yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, I am convinced this is the one thing if we ever get to ask Pablo Hidalgo a question, I'm like, it's not about the leftist politics of the show. Can we make it retcon so that Harvey Korman's alien is the same alien as the Doctor in Andor? Can we just make that happen, please?
And Quadpaw, I think like everybody who's seen the show will remember who this guy is because he's got such a unique face, which is like a really well done mask with these robot eyes and robot ears. But then his arms are just 2 guys in a jacket together.
Not even trying.
Like you can tell that like the actor's arms are the top and there's just like another guy behind him massaging around blindly, which is just like great.
I love it.
Even in a big budget show.
He's both his surgeon and his scrub nurse. Sort of fumbling for things. And I love it when in a second when Cassin comes in with his gun, he puts his little hands up first.
Yeah.
I don't know if they did this on the English version of Who's Line, but it reminds me of the Helping Hand sketches where they would put his arms under his arms and just do bits.
Absolutely.
Yes. So what are Lobot's things? Do we know what they actually are?
Let's look it up.
His little ear boxes.
He's listening to podcasts.
Okay. Lobot was a human male from the planet Bespin. With the assistance of his cyborg construct, was paid to run battle calculations for the Galactic Empire. However, he eventually began working with the smuggler Lando Calrissian, running numerous criminal jobs. And during one job, the theft of the Emperor's personal yacht, Lobot was gravely wounded by an Imperial guard, and in his injured state, Lobot's mind was lost and his cybernetic implants took over. So, like, it's kind of like a Doc Ock situation.
Right, yeah.
Like, he's got these cybernetic implants to help him, like, hear better or whatever, but then at some point they take over his brain.
Wonderful.
And his implants enabled him to communicate with the city's central network. And so, yeah, he's, like, plugged into the internet. He's got the Elon Musk brain implants.
I was going to say, maybe it's an insurance thing. He has to be broadcasting to what's happening with his doctor for the insurance purposes. But I don't think he's in network.
No.
Or part of the NAS either. No, NHS. Yes. Are we good with Quad Pod talk for now? Or do we have anything more about Quad Pod we want to?
Yeah, we just see Vel holding Nemec's IV bags, which is like interesting, like what a backwoods doctor he is. That you know, I think this is very clearly not where he usually works. This is some like third site that they've set Quad Pod up at in case he's needed, is what it feels like.
Yeah.
Or actually, no, we know this is his house. Never mind.
And then he'll return to his wife, Gormanda.
Yeah. Gormanda has her home chef station where she broadcasts.
Exactly.
That's happening just outside of here.
In her instructional cooking cassettes.
But we then head outside of the doctor's office where we see Skeen and Cassian sitting among these like bamboo trees. And
such a great.
Yeah, it's such a great visual where they feel like almost like they're behind like prison bars or something.
Yeah.
And Skeen asks Cassian if he thinks Nemec is going to make it. And Cassian replies, if he's lucky. And Skeen scoffs and looks up at the stars and says, luck drives the whole damn galaxy. And this is a line that feels like it's almost like a pointed reference towards the fact that like every other Star Wars story revolves around the Force. And the Force is what makes you lucky in this galaxy. But here in this story of Andor, that is not the thing that drives the story.
And of course, you got that conversation in the original Star Wars where Han Solo says, you know, we're just lucky, and Obi-Wan says there's no such thing as luck. You know, so there's very two different. You know, the scoundrels kind of believe in luck. They believe, and I think this is key to what happens next with Skeen.
Yeah,
is that he scoffs and goes luck, and I think, you know, not to jump ahead too far, but I feel like he's having a bit of PTSD, having just got through and incredibly lucky to get out of Aldhani, incredible by the skin of their teeth. Everyone else has died except for him and Vel and Cassian. And, you know, he's like, this is it. I'm done. You know, this is my luck.
The survivor's guilt has already kicked in.
Yeah, because the music then shifts and Skeen reveals to Andor that they've got a hold of 80 million credits, give or take. And he reminds Cassian of what he told Skeen a few episodes ago, that you want to win and walk away. And, you know, walking away with 40 million credits sure would be a win.
It's such a great tonal shift because you have this heroic music kind of almost like, yeah, we got away, we made it. And it fades out and there's a beat.
Yeah.
And then he says, you want to guess how much is in there? And then this low note comes in.
Yeah.
And it's such a great shift in tone. But the kicker is when he says, that's 40 million a piece. So that's, without saying it, he's saying it. And it's so well done. It just, the tone just totally turns around on a dime, as they say.
Yeah, because then Skeen lays out exactly how the two of them could walk away. And Andor sits up straight as he's taking it all in and asks, but what about the rebellion? And Skeen makes it clear, oh, I'm a rebel. It's just me against everybody else. And even his sad story about his brother being killed by the Empire, he reveals was a lie. And this is where I think that at this point it's clear that Skeen always had the idea of trying to run away with the money, because
I mean, he was accusing it of Cassian. That he was accusing Cassian of was kind of the thing he was thinking himself.
Exactly. That like he took this job thinking that he could get paid. He could, you know, we're going to go rob this thing and I can run away with some of the money. Maybe he wasn't planning on running away with all of it, but I do think there was some part of him that thought I can stuff a bunch of gold doubloons into my pockets and walk away with that without anyone noticing.
Well, I heard on your previous episode, Andrew Overby's theory
about
this as well. So maybe we can talk about that a bit. But it's what I love is it is ambiguous. I think there is a lot of ambiguity because you've got that moment where he's saying, "I've run out of luck," and you get the feeling that he's coming down, and that this is kind of, if it wasn't a spur of the moment decision, he did have a contingency plan there because he says there's a moon 8 parsecs away where I know, So he's had that backdoor option, which is probably why he survived as long as he has. So I get the feeling that he has been there thinking about this all along, but I love the ambiguity of it. I love the fact that it's not totally laid out.
And at some point, I think Nemec got added to those plans. I think at some point Nemec was going to run away with him. I think at some point that was the idea, was he was going to convince Nemec impossibly to leave everyone behind.
I almost would go the opposite way, that I think that he came into this with the idea of stealing the money away, and then he meets Nemec, and then maybe Nemec starts weaseling his way into Skeen's cold heart, but then seeing Nemec get crushed by the money that they're stealing reminds Skeen of what moves this galaxy. This money is the only thing that really matters. And now that he's seeing that that poor bastard believed in luck, he believed in ideals, and now he's on the operating room dead, and that could have just as easily been me. And instead of dying out there like everybody else, I could walk away with 40 million credits, and that'll be worth it. Because at the end of the day, he does admit that he can't fly the trawler. So there is a part of me that's so
what was your plan here?
Yeah, exactly. What was his plan? I mean, he probably didn't even know what the heist was when he took it, but he just figured maybe I can find a way to steal it away. Because at this point, then Cassian asks Skeen, "What are you going to do? Just leave Vel here?" And Skeen tells him to not play the high mind with me, which is, I think, the first time I've ever heard that, little piece of Star Wars dialogue come up. And then Skeen lays out exactly who he sees Andor to be. "You're not here to save anybody but yourself. I saw it the first minute you came into camp. You're like me. We were born in the hole, and all we know is climbing over somebody else to get out."
Wait, what are hive minds in the Star Wars universe?
High mind, don't take the high road with me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, is this a Star Wars thing that I'm not missing?
No. But this line here, where Skeen is laying out how he sees Andor, is very similar to this is the guy that we've seen Andor to be. We've seen him scamming his way through Ferrix, trying to get, a couple credits at a time. And so Skeen is right that is who Andor is. And I think Andor is scared of seeing himself reflected in Skeen. Because, the moment that he looks away, as he's imagining how to get away with this, Cassian pulls out his blaster and shoots him dead.
Yeah, because the moment earlier when you said Cassian sits up, he sort of puts his hands around the back there. And I just wonder if he's getting his gun ready in anticipation of what's coming.
I think he's thinking about it, because also I think Cassian knows that if he turns Skeen down, Skeen's going to kill him. Because Skeen knows that Cassian will just go and tell Vel. So it is kind of similar to that opening scene where he gets accosted by the Primor Corpos, because he kind of has no choice but to kill Skeen in this moment. His choices are run away with 40 million credits or kill Skeen. And I think the Cassian that we saw at the beginning of the show would have more seriously considered running away with the 40 million credits, as opposed to killing him.
It's also hitting me that it's such, the show does a lot of the people staring up at the sky, whether it's the sun and he's staring up the moon. There is the dark version of the dream. It's, I can see myself in a better place, but it's through darkness and violence, not through, excitement and journey and learning.
It's not this isn't a show that's filled with hope. There's no new hope here.
But that's coming.
It's coming, kids.
There was no hope until there's a new hope. Yes. The return of the hope. So, what's interesting about the scene is they actually made a change from the original Disney Plus production. Did you guys know this?
No.
So on the original version on Disney Plus, Skeen shoots first.
Oh, that's a low
Very
blow.
funny. You got us. But that is true that, like, you know, we've talked about this a lot, that Cassian is very much like a Han Solo type in the show and in the Star Wars universe. And there's a lot of Han Solo types out there. But the thing that differentiates Cassian, I think, is that his character very definitively does shoot first, you know, whereas even Han Solo himself have been massaged down to be a little less prone to extrajudicial murder.
I think Skeen is like the unrepentant Han Solo as well. I think they're sort of both of them have very similar personality roots. Of like, if Han Solo really does only think about himself, he would be okay, you know, shooting Luke and Obi-Wan and taking whatever they had. And
this is like thematically Cassian killing this older version of himself, but he doesn't really know it yet, because as Skeen slumps over dead, this eerie quiet rolls over as Andor panics to figure out what he's going to do next. And we then cut inside the medical hut as Dr. Quadpaw wipes off all 4 of his hands and puts a sheet over Nemec's dead body. And
no,
our poor boy. Vel thanks him for trying, and Andor comes in with a gun pointed at them both, and then Quadpaw's little hands, inside hands, come up first, and then the other two come up after. The jazz hands. And Quadpaw insists that he did everything he could for the young revolutionary, but Vel says the gun's not for him, and Andor insists it's not what she thinks either. And he offers 30,000 credits for Quadpaw's ship, and Vel calls out to Skeen for help, but Andor tells her that he's dead, and he reveals that Skeen wanted to take the money and leave her here. But Vel doesn't believe him, and Cassian scoffs and tells her that she'll have to think about that. And here Vel becomes really disgusted in Andor. She calls him a disgusting bastard.
Disgusting bastard.
Yes. And says
that's why you hire
Brits.
That's why you hire Brits for those lines. You know, you disgusting bastard.
So I'm going to disagree. I think she does believe him. I think she's reckoning the fact that she almost did the same gambit herself a few scenes ago, when she was like, "I'm okay letting Nemec die. Let's just keep going." I think she's reckoning with herself that she would have been okay letting somebody die to let this mission work. I don't think she knows that yet, but I think there's something in her conscious that is reacting that way, because I think she does kind of know that he might be telling the truth.
But I think what's happening here is that, again, everybody knows Andor as low-life scumbag mercenary, you know? And so he's coming in and saying, this guy that you spent the last, 3 months with was actually trying to rob you. And in this moment, Vel is choosing to believe, she can't believe that Skeen would have done that. And instead thinks that it's Andor, which I think then plays into the storyline that follows, where they want to kill Andor, because I think they really don't trust him in this moment.
Yeah.
But she still gives him Nemec's manifesto.
Yeah. Well, that's what Nemec would have wanted.
Yeah. And if Nemec wants some, I think she's like, if Nemec wants something, if Nemec thinks there's something in him, then maybe there is something in him.
I think it's telling. Andor hands over this kyber crystal, which Luthen gave him as kind of a down payment for doing the heist in the first payment. And he's saying, look, I'm not ripping you off. I'm playing you a straight hand. I'm giving you this back. I'm only taking what I'm owed. We're all square. Let's just back away. Whereas if it was a regular bank robbery or whatever, that with some criminals, that might be fine. But this is a rebellion. You give yourself to a rebellion. Vel has given everything to the rebellion. And she's like, well, okay, well, look, if you're going to give me this back, I'm going to give you this manifesto. Because I think in the fact that he plays fair with them in that way, even though he's pointing a gun at her, she's like, okay, he's not completely evil. There might be some hope in him, in bringing him around. If anything's going to do it, it's going to be Nemec's manifesto. So, I mean, obviously they talk about killing him in subsequent episodes because he is a rogue element. But I think she maybe sees something in him in that moment.
Yeah, and I think at the very least, she trusts Nemec, that when she tells Cassian that Nemec wanted him to hold on to his manifesto, Cassian like recoils. He's like, I don't want it. And she said that he insisted. And it's almost like against his will that Cassian takes it. Like he's being pulled by something towards it. And then he takes the manifesto and runs away, leaving Vel behind. And so I think in this moment, Vel is very conflicted about what's happened. On the one hand, she thinks Cassian's a disgusting bastard, but on the other, Nemec does trust in him that he could mean something to this rebellion. And that's the crucial midpoint of this season, I think.
Yeah, and it's there in her performance as well. She's so good in this.
Yeah, one of the most underrated performances in the show, I think, because she doesn't have as many of like the big show-stopping scenes that characters like Mon Mothma and Luthen and even Clea gets those scenes in season 2. But Vel doesn't quite get them quite as much, but she does such an amazing job with what she gets.
I think are we done with the scene?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's. We never made a theme song for 1907 minutes, but I think it's time. So just like just to catch everybody up, last week the conclusion of the bank robbery in Tbilisi has happened. We are now left in the chaos afterwards. So I'm going to start my clock at 7 minutes, and I think I'm going to start with talking about. I think we always say this is a story based off Joseph Stalin robbing a bank, and the reality is most of the evidence shows that he was not there the day of. He sort of organized this and came up with it, but he wasn't the man on the ground. And I think what we're finding now is the real man on the ground was Camo, who is the basically Bolshevik fighting guy. He gets to do all this, or full name Simon Arkashi Petrosian. But basically, as we re-enter our scene, there are about 50 people are dead in the square. The authorities state that only 3 people have died, but documents later reveal that it was much higher than that. They have gone away with, basically in modern day dollars, is about $5.2 million worth of money. But only 25% of that money was on untraceable bills. The rest were sequential. So basically they couldn't use them anywhere. So most of the money they couldn't really use very well. In the investigation, they basically couldn't figure out the difference between like the Polish socialists, the Armenians, the anarchists, the socialist revolutionaries, and the Russian state of who was responsible, which feels like a rant by a certain revolutionary in this show. Yes, eventually it's up to Camo to move the money out of country. He then takes it to meet with Lenin in Finland. He then spent some time with Lenin. He then travels to Paris to buy more arms and ammunition. At this point, as we talked about, his eye is really fucked up from having various bombs blown up in it. So Lenin tells him to go to Berlin to meet one of his doctors, Yakov Zimartiski.
Did he have 4 arms?
I mean, it's not in the record. It's not off the record. But unlike our good doctor here, Zimartiski was actually a spy for the Russian government and gives Camo over and is forced for him to be arrested. When he's arrested, they find that he has a forged Austrian passport and a lot more detonators for more bombs. This guy just fucking loves bombs. At this point, Camo reaches a lawyer through Leonid Krasnin, who appeared before, telling him to feign insanity for his trial. To do this, he refused food, tore clothes, tore out his hair, attempted suicide by hanging himself, slashed his wrist, and, quote, ate his own excrement while he was being evaluated. In order to make sure he was not faking, doctors put pins under his nails, struck him in the back with a long needle, and burned his wrist with hot irons to see if he was breaking. He kept to the bit, which is kind of impressive. He then, at the trial, which this rules, continued to act insane by pretending the proceedings were not happening, and then had a pet bird in his shirt that he just talked to and fed for the entire trial. He then is arrested and put in jail. he says, "I'm resigned to death, absolutely calm. On my grave, there should already be grass growing 6 feet high. One can't escape death forever. One must die someday. But I will try my luck again to try any way of escape. Perhaps we shall have one more laugh over our enemies. I am in irons. Do what you like. I'm ready for everything," which feels like a line out of Star Wars. And that he did. In August 1911, after feigning insanity for 3 more years, he escaped from the psychiatric ward in Tbilisi by sawing through his window bars and climbing down a homemade rope.
That's beautiful.
Yes, he then was no longer insane. However, he was kidnapped again. He was taken again by the prisons and then given 4 death sentences. He then, incredibly, although he was sentenced to death, a couple years later, there was a giant Jubilee amnesty in spirit of the Roman dynasty's tricentennial, which meant that anyone who had a death penalty was forgiven, but he still remained in jail until just a few years later when there was the Russian Revolution in 1917 and he was freed as a hero.
Wow.
So, good job, Camo. The most insane guy in history. Yes. Yes. The money successfully paid for things, but also Camo rules, and the story is all about Camo now. And
Andor loves Camo.
1907 minutes, the story of the 1907 Tbilisi bank robbery.
Nice.
Some snaps for Alex for your hard work. That's crazy. So funny to get a quadruple death sentence and still live through it. He got hit by the PORD and survived.
In jail 4 times, as far as I can tell. At least 4 times he breaks out of.
Mm-hmm. I do imagine it was easier to break out of jail back then. You know, it's all these old iron bars. There's no electronic surveillance on them. You could kick out a bar and no one would know. You know, if you break a window now, I feel like they probably have sensors and stuff on them.
Oh, it's not funny. After all this, he died when a car hit him when he was on his bicycle. That's how he goes.
Same as it ever was. Biking.
Same as it ever was.
The car drivers and the rivalry between car drivers and bikers took out a real one.
R.I.P. Camo, you would have loved 15-minute cities.
Thank you, Alex, for that deep dive.
But yes, speaking of what happens after a robbery, after we leave the scene in Frezno, back on Coruscant, the ISB members run into the main meeting room to hear Partagaz instruct them to don't get comfortable. This is not a meeting. No one is going home. I don't think he says order a bunch of pizzas, but basically says, tell your staff, tell your families, I want every star sector and planetary emergency retaliation plan in the building ready for presentation by midnight.
Yeah, the Coruscant Domino's tracker was going off the chain this night.
There's a name for it's what the Pentagon pizza theory.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you know, Mark? Do you know about this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I was listening to, I've forgotten his name. He was a whistleblower. He used to work for the CIA, I think.
It's called the Pentagon Pizza Index, and for anyone who doesn't know, it's the theory that whenever a military action is about to happen, they order a bunch of pizzas to the Pentagon. And because they're pulling an all-nighter, so here we have that in Star Wars form. They're ordering a bunch of space pizza to the ISB office,
and it's little things like Partagaz saying, "Don't tell your families," and they're always humanizing the Imperials in this. Whereas in Star Wars, it was very black and white, very good and evil. Every opportunity they get, the Gilroys, to humanize the bad guys, to make them feel like, they're not Darth Vader. They've got families. They're working late. They're gonna have to order out for space pizza and blue milk or whatever.
I think anyone who's worked in an office has had that emergency all hands meeting where you don't know, is someone getting a promotion? Is someone getting fired? Are we all getting fired? Are we getting bought? Did someone blow up our external headquarters? As
a New Yorker, I'd be remiss not bringing it up that the pizza index is different than the pizza principle. The pizza principle is that for some reason, since the 60s, the average cost of one slice of pizza in New York has matched the cost of a subway ride, just inflation-wise, for the last 60 years. That is the pizza principle. They both exist. But yes, back to Star Wars. I had to.
But in one very, very short scene, you suddenly get very concerned for the rebels. Because after this, nothing is the same. And, we end with Luthen kind of laughing and everything. But you kind of think, oh, boy, this is... And, of course, the first scene, I think it's the first scene in the next episode, you've got the head ISB guy saying, right, this is it. No more Mr. Nice Guy. People think we've been nice so far. This is it. Things are, sentences are going to be bigger. It's really going to have a catastrophic effect across the whole galaxy. So, but in just that little scene, you get a feeling, oh boy, yeah, okay, the celebrations, we can't, ride on this for too long. So, maybe Skeen was right.
Yeah, because at the end of our last episode, they got away, and it's this big heroic space battle where they're flying through the eye, and it's Star Wars. We're like, fuck yeah, this rocks.
TIE fighters, yeah.
But then almost immediately we get hit by a betrayal. We get hit by Nemik's death. We get hit with Cassian being seen as a betrayer. And now here we see the ISB all hands, where we see just how many people are now arrayed against the rebellion. This was a mission that ended with 2 people still alive. And here is a boardroom filled with 40 people all dedicated to killing them. So it flips that we got our heroic Star Wars action set piece, but this is not gonna end well for them.
And I think that there's so many examples throughout history of, these big momentous actions where people take the step knowing that there's going to be revenge by the people who are doing it 50 times fold, whether it's Hamas, whether it's 9/11. There are these examples of people making these sort of very clear statements against their enemy. And, they know in some ways what's going to happen in response, but that it's the goal of that initial thing that they hope will carry on beyond their lives, because they're not making out of it.
Yeah.
Going back, does Partagas have a particular accent that we should be noting compared to what's his?
Well, Anton Lesser is a phenomenal actor. And I've never met him, but he read several audiobooks for a publisher that I worked with for that. I knew the audio publisher who worked with him, and she said he's just got one of those voices. It's received pronunciation, which is what they teach you at drama school when you're looking for a clear, concise British accent, which is what the newsreaders use over here generally. And particularly if you're a working class actor, you get your regional accent drummed out of you in order that you can do RP. So, but he's got Lesser's got such a wonderful, wonderful voice, the timbre, the tone of it. It's instant authority. And of course, I know him from Game of Thrones. My kids know him from a British TV show called Primeval, which is about these people. I don't know if you know about it, dinosaurs coming back and coming through. And he's in, I think, the last season of that. So yeah, he's just one of those actors who crops up in genre stuff and just gives his all. And he's just so watchable. And he's so good in this, in that he's an authoritarian, but he's also looking out for Dedra, and it's just and to see him at the end, end of season 2, when it all goes horribly wrong. It's such a masterful performance. He's never less than watchable.
So I was actually looking up because I was gonna make a joke about it'd be really funny if somebody in the show spoke with the American knockoff of RP, of the mid-Atlantic or transatlantic accent, the one that we came up with, to try and be like, oh, we need to have a fancy accent that everyone speaks. But I was looking it up, and basically I'm like, oh, what are some examples of people who have used the mid-Atlantic accent? And it lists one that James Earl Jones wanted to use it when he was talking to Darth Vader, because he wanted to be seen as equal to the Empire, which I think, going back to our talk a lot about Cyril having this American accent and trying to keep up with all the Brits around him, I think there's something interesting that Darth Vader was dealing with the same thing of trying to have his accent be viewed as prestige as the people without him, but he's still an American, and he's still out of frame.
He's James Earl Jones. That voice, come on.
Yeah, that would have been. I think it's a good thing that he just used his normal speaking voice for sure.
Yeah.
And more interesting than having who was the original voice, because he was British, right? What was the name of the guy?
Well, it's Dave Prowse. That's Dave Prowse, who's from Bristol. Carrie Fisher called him Darth Farmer because the Bristol accent is "Hello, my lover" kind of thing, you know. So it's it's a lovely accent, but it doesn't scream dark-hearted authoritarian. I can't say the word. A bad guy. It doesn't say bad guy necessarily.
Yeah.
So yeah, bless him, Dave. He got dubbed on everything. Because in the UK, he was the spokesperson for road traffic safety. We had a thing called the Green Cross Code Man, and this was, when I was growing up, this is how I learned to cross the street. You stop at the curb and you look both ways, and they'd have these public information films where kids would just go gallivanting into the street, and the Green Cross Code Man, in the form of Dave Prowse, in a big costume with a green cross on it, would say, "Stop right there." And he'd explain to them that they have to do these things before they cross the street. And for the later ones, they used his voice, but for the early ones, he was dubbed. So everything the poor guy did, he ended up getting overdubbed, which you have to feel for him. So, poor Dave.
And there was not a convention circuit yet to really cover up the fans who come to see him anyway.
No.
Yes, as the various members of the ISB put in some text about why they won't be home tonight, we cut to the Galactic Senate, where Mon is giving a speech, calling for support to investigate what's going on with Gorman, which will never come up again.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that the first mention of Gorman in the series?
They've mentioned it a few episodes ago, where Mon, but it's kind of like the pet project that Mon has. That's her liberal project, is supporting the Gorman people. The reason for that is because I think when Tony sat down and started working on Andor, the Gorman massacre was the biggest piece of Mon Mothma's story. And so I think they always knew, if we're going to tell this story that includes Mon Mothma, and we're going to talk about the rise of galactic fascism, that the Gorman massacre was going to be a part of it. So they did a great job of seeding these references to Gorman throughout season 1, so that by the time we get to season 2, it's hopefully not the first time that the casual listener has heard that name, and then obviously becomes a major part of the story in season 2.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point of it being the liberal project. It's the good thing that these people are fully defensible. They truly need help. They're in no way bad. That is sort of the distinction of it's the perfect, it's the perfect people who deserve the help, because people who might be pushed back don't deserve the help, but they're innocent because they are. That's
the reason why Gorman becomes such a focal point for Luthen's story and the ISB, because as Mon says here, all they're doing is just trying to assert the rights that they have as a part of the Empire, as a vassal state. And yet here they are being trampled for no good reason.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you think of Puerto Rico. It makes you think of a bunch of other places that are just under the heel and wanting their own rights and facing huge amounts of debt and control from the current empire that's controlling them. And it's a show that, one of the things about the show and why I think we'll be able to sustain it, is that there's just so much happening in history that matches these things.
And likewise,
are big, just generally ignored by most of the hoi polloi of the Senate. It's Gorman. We're talking about Gorman for the 8th time. Call me when something else happens.
And on that note, the Senate is 3/4 empty while she's giving the speech. Nobody is even there to listen to it, and then they get distracted.
It reminded me of a lot of fringe theatre I did in my youth. People getting up and walking out in the middle of an important monologue. Yeah, I totally related to that. The echoey kind of cavernous sound.
And then, what's Mon's accent? I'm just going to ask while we have it.
Yeah, while we have an expert on
British
accents.
Oh my God!
Is it also RP?
Well, yes, it is, because she's the actor, and I've forgotten her name, Genevieve O'Reilly. She's Irish. Yeah. She's got a lovely Irish accent. So, and of course she's following in the footsteps of is it Caroline Blakiston, who played Mon in Jedi, Return of the Jedi, who had a very kind of received pronunciation RP accent.
Yeah, it's Genevieve O'Reilly has been pretty open in the press about like her personal connection of being Irish and the idea of colonialism and imperialism, how that personally impacted her. So having to do both roles is a really interesting way to navigate that performance. Yeah, it's everyone's sort of cell phones are going off as they're getting texts and getting distracted, and she starts to see people leaving their little booths. We can only assume that Senator Jar Jar Binks left early, along with Senators E.T.
Yes,
the other members of the Galactic Senate.
They didn't bother showing up to the Senate for this. Misa no care about Gorman.
Misa have call time. But yeah, so once she realizes that, she also checks her iPad, and she's shocked to see what she sees.
Mm-hmm.
She's hit her data limit, and she's not happy about it. That's what she's shocked about.
Yes.
Yeah, so then we cut. We're just hopping around Coruscant as we cut to Luthen's store, where he and Clea show a customer pieces of. Let me get this right. I trampled over Russian today, so let me trample over the other thing. Devaronian.
Yeah.
Yes. And Luthen in some. Just the master bullshitter, just doing his job of, there's an inscription on that one in a language no one remembers. And she tells him, the woman says, how sad. He goes, no, it's liberating. You decide what it says, your own secret language. Just the best. It sounds profound, but means nothing.
And I want to shout out the Devorians are the Devil Man from Cantina. So that's the culture that they're talking about.
They're red, not blue.
Well, blue jewelry on red skin, I'm sure looks good,
Very fetching, yes.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, he's a great little showman here of like, you get to decide what it means, which is also very much what Luthen is doing. It makes me wonder, like, is that Sky Kyber actually Rakatan invaders, or did he just make that up as well?
He's out the back whittling them. And then we got another British accent for you, where the guy goes, got anything from Aldani? Which is
a
little bit Surrey, Kent suburbs kind of Thames estuary accent almost. So yeah.
What does that signify? What does that region signify or represent?
It's not Cockney. It's very middle. It's kind of working class that's gone up to middle class.
Okay.
So they probably got. I mean, it's basically my accent. So they've probably got working class forebears, but they're now working in an office or something and have had to curtail. They've had to add H's to their speech in order to fit in. This is, it's like therapy for me. So, I mean, like my wife notices that if I speak to any of my family on the phone, I immediately turn into Dick Van Dyke, so, all right, yeah, lovely, fucking hell, yeah, wagger. So, but when I'm, conversing with you good people, I become a little more, it becomes a little more, not quite RP, but what they call Thames estuary accent, which you'll find along, in Kent and Sussex and Surrey and places like that.
This reminds me, when I studied abroad in London and I was working at a film production company, and they're like, let's just put the intern on the phone to answer calls, and you have like a New York accent trying to deal with a thick London accent, and just this is the worst use of my time and their time of me trying to get their numbers down and they're trying to get my number down. But I did successfully in my time there. I was like, there's one thing I need to do, and it was me being able to say sorry in a semi-convincible accent. So just when I was on the tube, people wouldn't immediately clock me as American when I was trying to get around. Where I was like, sorry. Like I could get that down just so they wouldn't, turn around and be like, oh, it's a Brit or it's an American. Of course,
you have to apologize for everything.
Exactly.
Even when it's not your fault. I'm like, you've been run over by a taxi cab. I'm so sorry. I should have been walking in the road there, or I should have seen you mount the curb and run me down. I'm terribly sorry. So that is very, very true.
It's the scenes from European Vacation where he keeps getting hit by just bleeding out.
Yeah.
No, it's yes, as you said, there's the other man asks if anything is going on Aldani, and like I found this really interesting. And again, I'm glad that we're watching the show over and over again because I would not have noticed it. So the mask falls from Luthen's face pretty quickly as he hears it's happened. Clea stays stone-faced.
Stone-faced. You can see she's bursting. She kind of...
But she can control himself when even he can't, which is such a good character detail.
Yeah. And he goes back out the back and has a big old laugh, which surely they can hear on the shop floor. It's not a recording studio. That's not a soundproof booth. Surely they can hear it. Maybe it is.
Yeah, but it's not. It's like it's a manic laugh. It's not a like I'm laughing. It's there's so much pent up with that, and it's almost like he's forcing himself to laugh. Like it's like like he's sort of forcing himself into it because he really doesn't know what else to do. Because the second he sort of puts his hands on his head, the laughter disappears, and he's sort of like, oh fuck, it's actually happened.
I think it's a laugh of like relief, because they kicked this off the day before, and he has just been sitting there, and all he can do is just sit and like wait for the news to break. And now that it finally has, he knows that it worked, and so he's just so relieved that this has finally happened. That he had, and yeah, you're right that like. Everything we've seen of Luthen is just how good he is at controlling himself. And this is the first time that he really has to run out of the room before he lets up what his real role is.
And I think he, more than anyone, knows what the consequences are going to be. He's not going to be surprised by the Imperial response. His first visitor in the next episode is Mon going, "Was this you?" And he's like, "What do you think?" So he knows he's forced her into a very difficult position. But this is what he's always wanted. He knows sacrifices have to be made. He knows that people have to be nudged, off into uncomfortable positions in order to make things happen. So there's also the laughter there of, here we go, rock and roll. This is it.
It's kind of like a Joker laugh in a way.
Yeah.
They bring in Mark Hamill for those. Only because I rewatched The Last Jedi yesterday, but I'm just reminded of like there is a very much like Jedi Padawan relationship between Luthen and Clea.
Yeah,
where he has trained her so well to cover up in even the way that he's not capable of doing. She's like he's teaching her everything she knows, and she's going to take on the next step. That's always sort of been the plan. It's a teacher strength and mastery, but weakness also. I think that's sort of it's a very good. We complain that there's no Star Wars. People complain that there's no Jedis in the show, but we have a Jedi Padawan dynamic right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess Luthen was a secret Jedi. The people were right. But then we cut the black, and that's it. We're done with.
That's it. Well,
that's
we're
end
recording
of the
this,
eye.
We're recording this the day after. I don't know if you saw this interview with Tony Gilroy in the Hollywood Reporter, where he's basically said, well, I can now kind of tell you. Because when he was doing the press for Andor, he was saying, there are instances throughout history of these things happening. They recur all the time. But he's basically just said, we were basing this on Trump. We were basing this on, what was it he called? Get Out Your Fascism for Dummies book for the 15 things you do. We tried to include as many of them as we could in the most artful way. How are we supposed to know that this clown car in Washington was going to basically use the same book that we used? So it's that thing of Luthen training Claire. You've seen this in all kinds of revolutions. In that the elders they've still got one foot in the past. They're not going to see that sunrise that he refers to. That dawn. And in order for things to change, you need to bring up the next generation to live it, to make it, to actuate it, and to keep it going for as long as they can. And it's it's powerful stuff.
And we've talked about this a bit of just like Tony Gilroy's personal politics. And I think you did a really good job of describing Tony himself, where he sort of sees all of these contradictions and understands how history works, but doesn't quite understand how to communicate, how to fix it. He's aware of all of these things and, happily communicates and does a great job of sort of telling the history, but he struggles. We saw him speak and people asked him, I keep bringing this up. He's like, what's the modern issue of politics that you think is the focus of today? And he goes, I'm really worried about,
repression in China.
Oppression in China. which is not a main, not that that's not a concern, but like that of all the things that are happening, that's the one that you lead with is a interesting tell of where his mind is.
I think
he's more of a Mon than a Luthen is the point.
I think the thing that he understands about revolutionaries and rebels and the left is that it eats itself. And going back to that, I was working with Declan in theatre. It was a sort of agitprop socialist theatre company I was working with called Unity Theatre. And this was 96, 95, 96, maybe 97. We were doing like Sean O'Casey plays and stuff like that. But they broke into two factions who were at each other. And it was like, I was thinking, where have I seen this before? Oh, yeah, the Judean People's Front in Life of Brian, where they do, brothers, we should be struggling together. We are. And it's like that. And he gets this.
No, we're the Judean People's Front. But yeah, you even forget which side you're on.
We're the only ones with clarity of purpose.
Yes.
Where's the popular front? He's over there. Splitter. So it's, he understands that the most difficult thing about any kind of movement like that is to get the left to agree on something. And he does that so brilliantly. You see it all the way through this series. And it makes you realize that if we could only get along within our own factions, then the right would be rightly terrified of us. And it's something that comes up in the second season as well, where it's like, there are more of us than them. And Nemec says it. Nemec says it in his manifesto, doesn't he? They fear us kind of waking up and realizing that actually we can turn on them at any time. So I think that's the key. Because in any other Star Wars, it's like, the rebels were all a gang together. Okay, Han Solo's a bit of a rogue, but he comes right in the end, kind of thing. Whereas in here, Han Solo shoots another Han Solo in the gut over who gets the keys to the spaceship. So it's
there's one thing about the USA and the England right now. Both the left parties are doing great.
Oh, don't make me cry.
But I think you bring up a good point, Alex.
Who is the Keir Starmer of Star Wars?
God. I feel like is Jar Jar the Tony Blair of Star Wars, inadvertently bringing about the Imperial war machine under the guise of the Labour Party?
I think that's David Cameron, actually.
Ooh,
because it was David Cameron wanted to sort the infighting in the Conservative Party over Europe, which no one else cared about. No one cared about. It's just a thing that the Tories were constantly fighting about. He said, you know what? We'll have a referendum. We'll get it out of the way. That led to Brexit. That led to, a huge division in our society over, nonsense that we never cared about before. And then it's allowed parties like Reform to come in, who are an extreme right, borderline fascist party, and probably will be if they get any power. They run the council here. They're about to, announce that all of our taxes have gone through the roof because of, they don't know how to manage a budget. So it's, David Cameron is Jar Jar Binks. I can live with that.
If there was any justice in the world, his story would end like Jar Jar's, where he becomes a street busker clown on the streets of London.
Still time. There's still time.
Still time.
It's also, not to zoom to the end of the show, but it's also making me think of Ed Miliband and his dad, where his dad was this, famous leftist Marxist writer, and then his son is just this weaselly center left. I'm like, I think, is that what happens to Cassian's son with Bix? The son of ends up just becoming the worst New Republic senator that you've ever seen.
He's there telling Rey, like, we don't need to do anything about the New Republic or about the First Order. It's okay.
He'll blow over.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us here on Andor. This was so fun.
My absolute pleasure. I would say, it was such a great clip. I love that clip. But again, you look at what's come before, what's coming afterwards. It's such a rich vein that you're tapping into. There is so much to talk about. All those little moments, those little beats that make up, this incredible show that I know that Gilroy and everyone on his cast and crew works so hard to make. And it's an absolute pleasure. Super nerdy. Love it.
Yeah, I saw a clip today of like some AI CEO saying, "Oh, writers are using AI to write all the dialogue that they don't want to
Yes,
write." And
bullshit.
that was just so antithetical to the idea of being a writer. There's no such thing as dialogue that you don't want to write. And I think that's one of the things that we really want to highlight on this show is that all of these little scenes that don't stick with you quite as much as like the Gorman massacre matter to the show. Each one is building up these characters and building up this world. And so yeah, there's no such thing, just like there's no such thing as a small part, there's no such thing as a small scene, there's no such thing as a small line of dialogue. And so
No.
yeah, no matter what 7 minutes you get, there's always something to talk about.
You're gonna make me pull up the David Simon quote. I don't know if you guys recently about AI, but it was they're basically asking him, they're like, I think AI can challenge what writers do at a fundamentally creative level. And it goes, so say the interviewer's like saying you're going from transition to scene 5 to scene 6 and you're stuck with that transition. Can you imagine going to AI and plugging in a portion of that script and saying, give me 10 ideas for how to transition? And David Simon in response, I'd rather put a gun in my mouth.
That's I interviewed David Simon once. I did an on stage with him at the Prince Charles Cinema in Leicester Square.
Oh, cool.
It was him and George Pelecanos.
Nice.
And someone had done a book. I think David Simon had done a book about The Wire, the real stories behind The Wire, or something like that. And the editor chickened out. He was like, he scares me. I don't want to talk to him. You do it, Mark, because I love doing interviews. I said, yeah, great. So we're hanging out backstage, and I said to David, so maybe we'll start by talking about some of your influences. So he says, no, I'm not selling anyone else's book. I was like, oh, shit. But what was great, I asked one question, and then he and George just spoke for the next hour. I barely got a word in. It was the easiest gig I've ever had. It's just fantastic. And he's like Tony Gilroy, he's deeply thoughtful guy who thinks about the human stories, whatever the genre he's working on. And,
he also has bizarre personal politics in the same way.
Yeah. When he thinks about it, he sees it from all sides, He understands that in the end, it's human beings muddling through life.
But he's also very famously on the Writers Guild of America East. They have been actively trying to organize outside the traditional TV model. Like they sort of say, anyone that who wants to be organized will organize them. And he's sort of been very against that, of being like, the Writers Guild should be for TV and film writers only. We shouldn't expand the union. It dilutes our power. And I think it's just if you want to talk about how change is created, and you're sort of being like, but well, my benefits should only stay for me. We shouldn't really risk giving them to other people. It's sort of an interesting dynamic when you're writing about the power of unions within your own show.
Yes, I think it's the limits of storytelling to change the world, is that you can tell these stories that are so revolutionary and do such a good job of highlighting systemic issues in society, but then maybe perpetuate some of those same ideas in your personal life because you think that that's somehow different than what the people you're criticizing are doing. So, Mark, if you were to come back / when you come back on Andorx, is there any moment or character that you'd like to return to? You want to call your shot now?
Oh gosh, I mean, it's all so good. It's genuinely, I loved all of it. I mean, it would be nice to come back for the second season, just because the Gorman massacre is so chilling. This is the thing as well that this show has done. It makes one stormtrooper scary. It makes one flyby of a TIE fighter absolutely terrifying.
Yeah,
again, in a way that it was when you first saw Star Wars. And, the stormtroopers, frankly, were a joke, They can't hit a barn door kind of thing. And in the Gorman massacre...
They bonk their heads on doors.
Yeah. And in the Gorman massacre, they're completely chilling. Ruthless killing machines, but still, we know the humans behind them as well. Which, again, when you look at what's going on in the world, is, has this extra resonance. So, yeah, bring me back for the massacre, guys.
Great.
At any time, I'm honored. I'm honored to be here. So thank you.
What's that quote? It's, with death of one man is a tragedy, the death of millions is a statistic. You know, when you're seeing that against one person, that's when they really see how those things impact people. When it's a giant, their scale is too big, you can't really tell what's going on, and there's that abstraction of danger and violence. And
yeah, Starkiller Base kills like 15 billion people in like a single blast. That doesn't really mean anything to us. You don't cry when that happens when you see the movie, but when you watch the riot on Ferrix or you watch the Gorman massacre, like it fills you with this like pit of despair. So,
or when Chewie was in the wrong ship.
Or when Chewie was in the wrong ship.
And the other ship. On that note, Mark, is there anything you wanted to promote or
yeah, where can people find you?
I'm at markstaywrites.com. I have a podcast called Creative Differences where I talk to writer friends about the little things that make a big difference to their creative process. I have a fantasy trilogy called The End of Magic, and I have a series called The Witches of Woodville, which is set in a little village in Kent during the Second World War, and it's witches versus various supernatural forces. And I did a movie a couple of years ago called Unwelcome, and before that a movie called Robot Overlords. So, just pop along and say hi. I run a thing called the Green Room for Writers, which is like a little writers group online where we meet and discuss. Because I've worked in bookselling and publishing for over 30 years, and as a writer, I've pretty much made every mistake, so you don't have to. But yeah, just find me online. I'm pretty much everywhere. So I have friends everywhere.
Well, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. And with this, we are now closing the book on season 1, episode 6, The Eye. Please be sure to write us a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps us with the algorithm. You can find Andorks on social media at AndorksPod. You can send us an email with any questions at andorkspod@gmail.com. And we'll see you next week for part 1 of season 1, episode 7, announcement. Later, dorks.
Later, dorks.